Welcome back to the SportsMax Zone. Football power brokers in England are at daggers drawn over a proposal from the country's two biggest clubs, Manchester United and Liverpool, to radically change the structure of the English Premier League. The proposal, dubbed Project Big Picture, aims to reduce the number of Premier League clubs from 20 to 18. It proposes to concentrate the power of decision-making into the hands of a handful of clubs, ending the one club, one vote approach that has served the Premier League since it was founded in 1992. Now, these points we're going to show you form the central plank of the Project Big Picture proposal. So, down to 18 from 20 clubs. Two Premier League sides automatically relegated each season and replaced by top two championship sides. The 16th placed Premier League club will enter into a playoff with the 3rd, 4th and 5th placed championship club for the right for one of them to go up to the Premier League, or in the case of the 16th placed Premier League team, stay in the Premier League. EFL Cup and Community Shield will be abolished. Special status for the 9 longest serving Premier League clubs. Those would be the big six, you know who they are, the likes of Man United, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, plus Everton, Chelsea of course, plus Everton, West Ham and Southampton, making it effectively a big 9. They will give £215 million immediately to the EFL. 8.5% of annual Premier League revenue to go on operating costs, 25% of the remaining revenue to go to the EFL. The EFL and the Premier League will be, TV rights will be sold together. Parachute payments will be scrapped, and £100 million immediately to the Football Association to cover lost revenue and to develop non-league, women's and grassroots football. You may say it's a lot about money, but when is it never? Well, the Football Association in England and the Premier League are opposed to the idea, and at least one Premier League club owner says supporting the proposal would be like a turkey voting for Christmas. The last time I heard that was in the Brexit debate when the former Attorney General, the blusterous Geoffrey Cox, cursed out the House of Commons and used that particular phrase. Well, joining us to discuss the proposed changes is our English-based correspondent, Simon Evans. Simon, welcome to the program.
Good, thanks for having me.
Good. All right, so Project Big Picture. For the viewers who haven't had the benefit of reading it like you have or hearing the commentary around it, tell them what Project Big Picture essentially hopes to achieve.
Well, what it is an offer to the EFL clubs, the 3 divisions below the Premier League, to give them more money. But actually, it isn't more money really coming from the Premier League. It's more money being spread out across the EFL instead of going into those parachute payments. Those parachute payments are to help the 3 teams who get relegated so they don't suffer such a big financial shock when they go out of the top flight. They're held for 3 years. Now, a lot of people in the EFL say those parachute payments distort the competitive balance in the championship and force teams competing with those relegated teams to overspend and so on. There's a lot of debate about that. Getting rid of them and spreading it out so that League 2 and League 1 clubs benefit from the Premier League's largesse as well is a popular move with the EFL, but it isn't going to be the EFL who votes on this. It's going to be the Premier League. And the controversial part of this is the change in the voting rights, moving away from one club, one vote to that creation you described earlier of the 9 clubs. And within that 9, this is the really clever bit, within that 9, it would only take 6 clubs within the 9 to vote for something for it to automatically happen. And of course, that de facto gives the entire power to the big 6.
So what is so wrong in this market economy where capitalism is the king and has been king for an awfully long time now, for those with the money and the pull to seek to consolidate revenue, to consolidate their own status at the high table, and to ensure that new money goes into that part of the English football system that is lacking it now and is suffering? What's so wrong with that in principle?
Well, capitalism gets managed and gets regulated in order to keep fair competition, doesn't it? And is it fair competition that more and more of the money, and it's a lot of detail in this incredibly broad range of document, but also included in it is more of the television revenue going to the big 6 as well. So the big 6 are already the richest in the Premier League. They're going to change the TV revenue so that they're even richer, and they're going to lock in their power so that they can continue to keep hold of that money or even expand it. So the question is it a good for the product, good for football, to have 6 teams that are solidate that elite in terms of their ability to compete against other clubs?
Simon, what positive can come out of, instead of having 20 teams competing, we're now having 18 teams?
Yeah, so what's this about, really? I mean, obviously, the positive for the big clubs is that they play less games. Why do they want less games? You'd think they get more money with the more games. Well, they want that time to be playing in what's going to be probably an expanded Champions League in a couple of years. They also want to cut back the season. That's why they're getting rid of the Community Shield, which, let's remember, is basically a charity fundraising game. They want to get rid of that so that they have a longer summer. Why do they want a longer summer? Because they go on those big lucrative tours to either the Far East or the United States, where they can generate huge amounts of revenue from that. So it's about basically trimming the Premier League down to size to allow them to have the space and the time to do other projects.
So with the removal of the EFL, the Community Shield, and of course the Carabao Cup, won't these smaller teams suffer, the poorer teams?
Yeah, I mean, the EFL Cup is a money spinner for the EFL clubs. It's their chance to play against teams from the top of it. On the other hand, if they're going to get 25% of the revenue instead of 4%, this is a really important part of it, and this is why there's so much support for this amongst EFL clubs. At the moment, they sent 4% of the revenue from the Premier League is sent down to the EFL. This plan says it will be 25%. So that seems quite generous. Actually, when you count out the money, when they've got 2 less teams to divvy out the TV money to, and they've got no parachute payments, it actually turns out the same amount of money coming from the Premier League. It's just been distributed in a different way. So the League Cup hasn't got many defenders, really. The big teams aren't playing all the time their full-strength side, and although we have seen this year a little bit of reverse in that trend. So I don't think there'll be many people fighting the corner of the League Cup or the Carabao Cup.
But Simon, here's the thing now. I note your response earlier when you said, when you spoke about the consolidation of power, and you said that effectively power would be consolidated in the hands of 6 clubs in an extended group of 9, but really 6, 2/3 of 9 is 6. So they really control the power. And you compared it to the situation in other European clubs. But isn't it true that even if we were to go to the Project Big Picture plan, the consolidation of power in England would still be broader than it is in any other major European nation? Because in Italy, there's only one, Juventus. There are other clubs owned by rich investors, but none with the pockets that Juventus has. In Spain, there are only 2, Barcelona and Real Madrid. And in real terms, it's only one, Real Madrid, because Barca have some serious problems that it will take a few cycles of transfer windows and revenue generation to fix. So it's really one. In Holland, there isn't the money bags that you can look at in England and point to. In Paris, there's only one, PSG. In England, there'll be 6. And although you're saying that, well, you're coming from 20, the collective power of 20, consolidating down to 6, and it's a far different situation. I'm saying yes, but I'm still saying that consolidating the power into the hands of 6, a broad group of 9 in England, is still much better than you have anywhere else, and is not the doomsday scenario that some people are suggesting, Simon.
I think there's truth in what you're saying there. I mean, I certainly think that, you look at the Bundesliga, which has very fair rules about lots of things and ownership restrictions and so on, but you have Bayern Munich winning the title every year these days. So, yeah, absolutely, it'll still be 6 teams competing for the title. But is that the right way? There's a lot of people in England get very hung up about the sort of spirit of the game and the tradition of the game and so on. And a lot of people weren't happy when the Premier League was formed, of course, and it's turned out to be a great success. So the question is really, is it justified to have that system of extended powers and votes for 6 clubs over it? And I do take your point, but I think this is the starting point for some changes. I think there are going to be changes, and I think it's politics. You're a political man, George. You know how it works. This is the first document that's come out about this. I'd be amazed if it's the final deal, if there is going to be any kind of deal. And I just wonder whether these clubs might not turn around and say, okay, at the moment, the system is you have to get 14 clubs to get anything passed by the Premier League, 14 out of 20. That effectively gives a veto to the smaller 7 clubs in a way. So why not go to simple majority voting? That's the way most democracies operate. One man, one vote, and one club, one vote. Sorry, in this case. And, whoever gets those 11 votes wins. And I could see that possibly being a compromise that might be reached, because the EFL clubs and the game in general and the government and the public does want to see the emergency money that's part of this package, 250 million immediately, going down to the EFL to save some of the clubs that could go to the wall in the next few weeks.
Absolutely so, and that's where I was going to go, because that £250 million is very, very important in the broad context of things. Talk about dangling a carrot. That is the mother of all carrots, because the EFL clubs, it's not that they needed the money now. They needed the money now 2 months ago to tie them through this very, very tough time. So with that said, Simon, there have been several entities that have said, or several quarters that have said, well, this is not a good proposal. Why don't we get the government to do something? The government will not take, or cannot, I don't think, Rishi Sunak is going to take taxpayers' money to pay $250 million to the EFL in exchange for nothing. And I don't think the money exists in government anyway to bail out the clubs in the manner that they need to be bailed out. This is a proposal that was being worked on before COVID hit, has probably been fast-tracked by the crisis that the clubs are in now, and represents the first serious proposal to change an English football system that wasn't as perfect as many people would say. And I'm saying, Simon, that in any capitalist situation, those with power will always look to consolidate power, and those with the means will always look to rake in more means to increase their revenue base and to make their profits greater, while at the time, if they can, lift up some others with them. And I'm saying, given that there's been so much talking and not much concrete proposal put on the table except this one, I can't see why some people, the FA especially, the Premier League itself in its current guise, is making it look as if all that has been tabled is balderdash. I've looked at it in detail, Simon, and I'm struggling to understand why the reaction to it is so negative.
No, I mean, I've been speaking to people throughout the EFL today, and there's a lot of enthusiasm for it and a lot of support for it. And of course, the people at the 6 clubs, they're keeping quiet at the moment officially, but privately, they think it's great. So the only people really who are going to block this are the ones who can block it, which are the smaller to medium-sized Premier League clubs, who are the ones who stand to lose out, because they're going to be more chance of them being relegated. They're going to get less of a share of the money and much less of a say in how the Premier League is run.
And Simon, sorry, on the point of the EFL, the parachute payment to clubs relegated from the Premier League being distortionary, isn't that a fact? And isn't it the fact that you get a parachute payment when you get relegated almost like tacit encouragement for bad decision making, because you're trying to get back to the promised land of the Premier League, so you don't manage money well because you know that money and lots of it is coming in? Look at Sunderland, look at Portsmouth. What good have the parachute payments done to clubs like those? Look at Blackburn Rovers. I'm struggling to find them in the English Premier League pyramid, in the English football pyramid now when I look. So I'm saying there are many examples of clubs running their affairs very irresponsibly because of this parachute payment they get. It has a huge distortionary effect when they drop down into the league below the Premier League, and I don't think it really benefits them in the way that it was designed to when the payments were passed, were debated and approved.
Well, it does help them in a few ways. I agree with the broad thrust of what you're saying there. It does help them, though, with a few things. When you get relegated to the Premier League and you've got players on contracts that are Premier League wages, you can't suddenly get rid of them. You can't always include a relegation clause for every player. So it does cushion the blow of going down there. But you're right, it's so big and it lasts for 3 years, which I think is too long. And it does basically allow teams, which can be a positive, it allows them when they go into the Premier League to spend without the fear that they're going to immediately be hit by austerity when they come back down. So it could work the other way as well, that a team goes up to the Premier League and goes, well, we can't risk anything this year. We've come up for maybe one season. We can't risk anything because we could be back down in the next division. There's no parachute payment. So we're not going to spend. We won't be competitive, and it's going to cause a lot of problems that way. It is complicated, this stuff. And I think that, again, some kind of compromise where you have not a 3-year big parachute payment, but maybe a 1-year cushion payment, you could call it, to help those clubs that are relegated while spreading the money out more throughout the Football League. The big problem, though, going back to the point about this COVID payment, the big problem they're going to have now is it's extremely difficult to get this passed. I don't think it's going to get passed in its current format at all, because turkeys don't vote for Christmas, as you pointed out at the top of the segment. But the big problem is they've come out now and said, well, we've got this 250 million and we've got 100 million for the FA as well. We've got 350 million to help you out for COVID if you agree to give us more power in our own structure. If that doesn't get passed, and then they then turn around and go, well, we're not giving you that 250 or 350 million. We want the government to help out. The government's going to say, you've got the money. We know you've got the money. You were offering it a week ago. So they kind of box themselves into a corner a little bit. And some of the Premier League clubs that I've spoken to don't support this, are really angry about it, because they're saying, hey, we're going to be clubs like Brighton or Burnley or Crystal Palace who could be in the Championship next year. You're asking us now to subsidise teams that could be our competition next season, and we're getting nothing back for it.
Dilemma. So as I leave you, Simon, who are the key stakeholders that the Man Uniteds and Liverpools of this world have to work on? Rick Parry is firmly in their corner, of course, with that huge carrot. He's only seeing cash, £250 million worth of it. Who else do they need to work on over the next few days and weeks to get, if not the whole package passed, like you, I doubt the whole package in its current guise will pass, but who can they work on to get huge parts of this passed, or even a new deal that still gives them essentially what they want: more power, more revenue, greater control?
Yeah, we'll find out which is the most important part of it for them, because whether it's the revenue or the power, I mean, they kind of go together, but they might have to separate those out and just settle for having more money or more power. You know, at the end of the day, they'll probably be looking to those ambitious clubs in the middle sector. So you'll be talking about clubs like Wolves, Leeds, Leicester, where they think they can start to tip the balance a bit. They need to get to 14 to have any sort of deal. It'll be interesting to see how the Football Association reacts to it. They've got a council meeting this week as well, where all the county FA officials and all the different people from different divisions come together. So the mood music is very much against this. The government's come out against it. A lot of public opinion, all the top journalists in the broadsheet newspapers have come out against it. They've got a big fight on their hands. But there is a lot of good stuff in this. The EFL do like it. And I think if they can start to maybe tone down some of the power grab aspect of it, as it's being called by some, they might find that there's a little bit more common ground they can find with some of those clubs, and maybe isolate some of the hardcore refuseniks in the Premier League and see if they can get something changed.
Yeah, I'll leave you with this one, Simon. You know, it's funny we're talking about football and power grab and giving something for something. There's a particular government in the Caribbean which recently announced that it will save businesses and help businesses to continue employing their staff in exchange for preference shares in the firm. So we'll give you some money. Of course, we'll tide you over, no problem. But you have to give up some ownership of the company. Sell that to us. Give us some preference shares and we can talk business. It's the same thing. It's the name of the game everywhere you go. The rich want to remain wealthy. And I don't know any rich man who doesn't want to remain rich, or entity or woman for that matter. It's just the law of the West, and it's just to negotiate to see who can get a pound of flesh, still not bleed to death, and still have a future.
Yeah, and it's all happening, of course, at the time of COVID. And there's an expression, I think it's one of the American, might have been Warren Buffett, I'm not sure, who said there's no opportunity like a crisis.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I think there's a degree of that. They say they've been working on these plans for quite a few years, but it's no coincidence it's come out at the moment.
Yeah, trying to exploit a weak opportunity. Simon, thank you very much as usual for your input. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good. Simon Evans, our man in the UK, who's our European football correspondent. You'll watch Simon in action, of course, on this channel in the Champions League coverage that we're kicking off starting tomorrow. Of course, the Champions League opens next Tuesday, and we have some massive games scheduled on SportsMax and SportsMax Zone, of course, also on the SportsMax app. As we go to the break, though, remember to catch the premiere of episode 3 of season 2 of Calypso Cricket SportsMax, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. ECT. That's 9 p.m. outside of Jamaica. The match being featured is the third test of the 2000 series between West Indies and Pakistan. This was the final home test for Windies bowling legend Curtly Ambrose, played at the Antigua Recreation Ground, the ARG. It was felt it would also be Courtney Walsh's final test in the Caribbean. But of course, the Jamaican played on until 2001. Pakistan middle-order batsman Yusuf Yohana scored the only century of the match, 103 not out in his team's first innings. But a combination of missed chances and an umpiring blunder cost them the match. So a lot of storylines in this game that you can relive this evening at 8 on SportsMax.
Calypso Cricket Windies Classics, tonight 8 p.m, 9 ECT on SportsMax.